welcome to Digital Shift, also known as Corporate Evolution Tales. Join us as we dive into the dynamic world of digital transformation. From illuminating case studies to captivating narratives, we uncover the stories behind companies' journeys toward digital excellence. Whether you are a seasoned corporate leader or an aspiring innovator, our podcast explores the shifts, challenges of modern business evolution. Hello everyone, this is another episode of Digital Shifts, aka Corporate Evolution Tales, and today my guest is Daniella. Thank you, Daniella, so much for being today with us and accepting my invitation. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome. Okay, would you like to present yourself before we will dive into digital transformation?
I would love to present myself. Hi, I'm Daniella. I am one of the technical product managers at a company called the Goodway Group. We are basically a full service digital media agency. I have been in the ad tech space for a couple of years now, but originally I did kind of come from true tech and startups. And before that, I was an engineer. So kind of started on the engineering side of things and then made my way over into TPM. In my current role, we work a lot with, advertising campaign automation. We do some work with predictive modeling. And we're also building platforms that help kind of support campaign strategy and advertisements and audience building as well. And throughout all of this, we're trying to incorporate some AI also. So a wide breadth of things that we work on, but very excited to talk about it.
Okay, I think I already imagine all the questions that I can give you about the stuff that you are working with. But let's start from the general thing. Okay, so what do you think about digital transformation? What does those two words mean for you?
Yeah, I think so many things about digital transformation. I think it's very important. Obviously, something, in our industries has been very prevalent for quite a while now. And I don't know if anyone could have avoided it up until now. But I think the way that I kind of perceive it is like a daily choice and a commitment to the concept. And so I think with everything you do, you have to just be constantly on top of your internal processes. What could use automation? Put it what is worth kind of putting in that lift, and just kind of continuing to evaluate your company on a daily basis. And not even from a company perspective, but a personal perspective, my day-to-day tasks, what could really benefit from digital transformation. So I kind of think of it as a choice day by day.
And you use that word that I'm usually comparing with digital transformation, which is automation. So do you think it is about automating processes, or is there anything more than that in digital transformation in your field?
Yeah, I think for me, digital transformation definitely encapsulates a lot more than that. I think it manifests a lot in automation and kind of making processes more efficient. But I think it can also just be incorporating third-party tools. It can just be adopting a completely new technology that no one's ever used before into the business that will just drive revenue, drive growth. It can be really anything. I think of it as just really anything transformative in the technology space. But I do think that it makes itself known quite a bit through automation in those processes.
Yeah, definitely. And when we are speaking about the improvement in our processes, I think a lot of people, when we speak about digital transformation, as an employees of company that are starting digital transformation, a lot of people are afraid of it. Do you think that people should be afraid of it, or it's more about the communication that should be done properly in order to escape that feeling?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that the reticence to change is something that I've seen a lot I think it's really common in the ad tech industry because it's such a tenured industry and people are very used to kind of the ways of doing things. I don't think that afraid is how I would describe it, but I do think that you should be skeptical. I don't think that obviously I work in tech, so I'm very pro digital transformation, but I also think that you shouldn't be adopting new tools. You shouldn't be trying to change your processes just for the sake of saying that you're changing your processes. I think that there needs to be actual thought behind it and making sure that I'm a big fan of cost analysis. So before we adopt something new, we'll always kind of do a cost analysis and look at labor hours and stuff and make sure that it's actually something that should be adopted. So I wouldn't say fear, but I definitely think some healthy skepticism is always good with these things, because you see the pattern so many times. You have an early stage startup and they get a bunch of funding that they've never had access to, and then they invest in a ton of new products and a ton of new automation, and then it ends up really backfiring. And so I think being judicious with your choices there is always important. But for the most part, I'm very pro, I would say. I have like a pretty positive view on digital transformation. What's your thought on that, though? I'm curious your opinion.
Well, I think you mentioned one thing that I'm always thinking about when we have this digital transformation. It's about the cost. And a lot of
Yeah.
people, even before like being afraid of the change, which again for me is more about proper communication, because I think people are afraid of unknown. So if you are properly describing or explaining why we need to do that change, and specifically with digital transformation, as we are speaking about processes that should be changed, as you mentioned, like the tools that can be integrated, etc. It's more about having that proper communication down with people. And similar to AI, the fear of being replaced, I think, is a lot there. Like if we are integrating a tool, it means you will not need me, for example, or like the job that I'm doing, right? So I think it's more about having that proper communication done. And from the company side, me being a CEO, a lot of times I think about changes as from cost side, like how expensive will be the change for me. And I think a lot of people generally, when they are speaking or they want to do digital transformation, they are afraid also of the cost that it can bring with it, right? Because it's like something unknown, even though you can have a plan for that, and it can cost a lot, like to change, to fail, to change again. But it can also be the other way when everything is going smoothly and you have the change that is bringing the positive side of it. So, and back to the question that I wanted to give about the cost that you spoke. So, do you think that digital transformation generally is something expensive for companies, or it's like more of correctly managing the cost of it?
I think it depends. I think some forms of digital transformation can definitely be expensive. Like if you're buying like a completely new tool, obviously that's going to really rack up the price. But I think there are also ways that you can work on, like have that mindset of digital transformation within your company that don't cost anything. Like I think a really simple one that I'm sure, no one's heard of is just like kind of using chat GPT in your day to day. Like that's something that my team's been adopting just for quick, and it's free. And so just quick things like if I need to write an email and I don't have the time, I'm saving myself 10 minutes by like doing it with AI and just fact checking. Or marketing copy, for example, is a big one. And that's something that I think is going to become really prevalent in the ad tech industry as well. You're already kind of starting to see it on the market as a lot of, marketing creative is being made with AI. So I think that there are definitely ways you can work it in. And then there's also the factor of maybe I want to work on digital transformation, but I want it to be in-house. And that involves, natively building something. And of course, that's going to come with a price as well. But I think that there are ways around it if the concern is really budget. I think that, it's truly just a mentality and like an attitude and being able to adapt to things. But I am curious to go back to what you were speaking about, because this is a question I had for you. In speaking about the communication surrounding like the change and people being like nervous about it, how do you kind of like grapple with communicating it in a way that shows people the value so that they will be willing? Because I think that's something that we run into a lot is like people being really set in their ways. And I think I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I think generally it's about presenting the facts at the beginning. As I mentioned about the plan, it's so important to share that plan. So it's not just people going and saying, hey, we are going to have digital transformation, which understands under it like changing the process. It should be something that is documented and you can share the plan with people and they can see exactly like the steps that you imagine on that path. Because if you will generally say about the change, it is something very unknown and very blurred, and people will start like speaking with each other or having thoughts or misunderstanding of stuff, which is like very dangerous. And having the documentation and generally having it transparently shared with people is the best way to start, at least like to kick off with the digital transformation, and making sure that everyone is on the same page, like literally they have that page open on their side. So I think having the plan is like best way, at least for the beginning, and later also follow-ups. So a lot of people think that when they start digital transformation, it's enough to share like a reason why they are doing it. but they are never coming with progress and sharing it with people, which is again very dangerous thing, and it can become something bigger later for people starting to leaving their jobs and finding new positions. And I think having those follow-ups is very important too. So it's not only about you sharing the plan, but also showing the progress of that plan. So I don't know, like weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, as is in the company, but just to show the progress generally, like to say, hey guys, like we are on this progress, we have these changes done thanks to you, sharing the appreciation during that part. And I think that is helping a lot, having those follow-ups, which are helping to make sure that people know about the progress, about the changes, and they feel that they are involved. And I think that's kind of saving the part that people feel supported in this way, and also they are not losing their motivation, and they understand what they're going with this change, including them too. So
Yeah, that's a good answer because I feel like making the focus of the communication, like the documentation, like how this will make your life better in the long run and like how it will drive revenue, like this will make you look good. You know what I mean? Like kind of focusing on the
yeah.
value for them is always helpful. That's an interesting answer.
Yeah, I agree. And when we are speaking about these processes, one thing that is coming to your mind, I think a lot of my guests have specific understanding of the usual processes that are done under digital transformations. Are there any specific processes that you think companies or like individuals are going through when we are speaking about digital transformation?
Like processes just in general throughout the company
Yeah,
or
I mean, like the stages, for example, of how it goes with, for example, with your company when you are
oh,
integrating
sure.
new tools.
Yeah, I mean, one example that comes to mind for me is in my last position. Since it was a little bit earlier on, I was at a pretty early stage startup. And one of the biggest blockers for us was design and like
Yeah.
designing the platforms and designing the UI. And I think that in the past, like kind of a very, very eras past of tech,
Mm-hmm.
there's been like a big, I guess, like gap between people who design and people who do not. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
design has always been like pretty inaccessible to people who are not designers
Yeah.
or don't identify as designers. But, you know, in my last company, we were trying to introduce, you know, like some of the more up and coming products. Like I know everybody uses Figma now and like Canva and
Mm-hmm.
Lucid, and design in general is just so much more accessible to people. Like I don't consider myself to be a very particularly creative person. I'm definitely not a design
Mm-hmm.
expert, but now I'm in Figma like every day designing the
Yeah.
platforms for the
Yeah.
team. And so I think that's an example for me because it's like, okay, we started out being really, really kind of pigeonholed and there was like a big bottleneck there in the process for our
Mm-hmm.
entire company in that we had to like wait for one designer to design something, and now it's kind of expanded to be a lot
Yeah.
more accessible. And so I think kind of taking the leap and the investment there and trying out different tools in that sense and then kind of making the process wider, I
Mm-hmm.
think was really, really beneficial. So that's something I try to think about like in my current role, when we're thinking about developing or adopting third party tools, is kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, maybe this is going to be a big cost, be a big lift at the beginning because the learning curve
Yeah.
is really steep, but like what will the cost, you know, be at the end, and kind of like what will the
Mm-hmm.
payoff be in terms of like time saved and efficiency and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what I think of.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that generally, like for the processes, is very specific to the company, and
Mhm.
I like to give this question to every guest just because the answer is always different,
I'm sure,
and
yeah.
everyone has their own opinion about the processes. Usually it's like, yeah, we are starting with kickoff, la la la, and then it's like becoming very interesting when they are speaking specifically about the tools that they integrated or like
Mm.
the people they were collaborating with. And when we are speaking about the tools, I always remember the fact of AI that really changed generally, like how we are integrating, how we are working. And you already mentioned, I think one of the biggest tools that we are now using on daily basis. And one question that is coming to my mind is about the AI. So do you think it's helping slash supporting digital transformation, or it's more disturbing on like the way how it's handling stuff?
I'm very pro. I think that it's definitely
Mm-hmm.
helping. I think that the idea that, like, obviously some jobs can be done more quickly with AI, like, that is a
Yes.
fact, but that's also what it's supposed to do. I think that anyone who uses AI on a daily basis knows that it definitely cannot replace a human now or in the near future. I think that there's a lot of hallucination that happens with AI still. There's a lot of things, there definitely need to be guardrails set up when you're using AI. You cannot just like send it out into the world and have it do your job. So in that sense, I'm not like disturbed by it. But I think that how I've seen it work is it's so helpful. Like, for example, now if I have a screenshot of a design that I want to throw, into an app, I can toss that into an AI and it can spit out the component code for me and I can just copy and paste it. Or if I like one that I've recently used is like Figma, for example, it's really difficult to build complex tables for whatever reason. Maybe I'm just bad at it, but I struggle with that sometimes in Figma. And so it's really helpful to go into OpenAI or like another application like that and kind of be like, okay, this is the table I want. These are the values. This is where the data is coming from, and kind of like integrate it that way. So it's been really, really helpful for my job. And I think looking at the ad tech industry in general, I think there's just a wide breadth of opportunity for AI. There's a lot of space for it where it's not being taken advantage of right now. I think when you're looking at, like we spoke about before, creating the actual advertisement creative, like that's a huge opportunity. I think developing campaign strategies and audience targeting, like that's a huge opportunity. Like there's so much space for it still, and it's still like pretty nascent. So I'm just excited to see where it goes. But overall, yeah, no, I would say I'm not afraid of it, although I understand why people might be, and I am very pro using it.
Yes. I think usually when I'm given this question, I'm like, I think people that are afraid of it doesn't know how to use it properly.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of well, it's not a lot, but it's still a knowledge that you need to have in order to properly use it. Like even having used a wrong prompt will make you for sure like hesitate to use it for a second time. But
for sure,
generally, if you are learning how to speak with the same OpenAI, it's helping a lot. And yeah, it's definitely saving some time. And when going back to our main topic of digital transformation, I think it's the same, because as we are speaking about digital transformation, it's still about changing processes and improvements, and using AI properly with the tools that have AI-based features and all that stuff. I think we can do better quality of work on improving stuff and having the processes digitalized, right? So,
I totally agree.
Awesome. And when we are speaking about AI, about integrations and all that stuff, I think another question that is coming to your mind is about the challenges. So do you think there are any specific challenges that you usually have when we are speaking about digitalizing, like integrating new tools and automating processes?
Yeah, for sure. No challenges. It's all going great. No, I think like specifically looking at the integration of AI and kind of how we're using it in my current role, because it is so new. And, if you're trying to use it for something beyond like, I guess like an elevated Google, you're definitely going to run into some issues. Like, for example, we're using it a little bit for, data analysis and kind of producing data visualizations and things like that, and kind of evaluating, the market using AI. And I think especially at the stage that it's at, the biggest challenge is that it's not fully automated. Like, while it seems like it is, you just always need someone to check it. And so you're always going to need a subject matter expert kind of like on hand to review everything. And that's time consuming, and like it can get expensive, taking hours and like labor and things like that. So that's been one of the biggest blockers for us, is just trying to figure out how to balance like the trust of AI, especially if it's like something that's directly informing, customers and like their client strategies and things like that. Yeah. So hopefully, I think like, of course it's learning from itself. So as time goes on, it's definitely gotten better. Like even just in the past year, using OpenAI from last year to now, it's like a totally different tool. And like the knowledge base seems completely different. It's so much more advanced. So I think with time, it will definitely improve and that will get easier, but definitely a struggle right now.
Agree. Definitely. And with challenges, I think there are also coming some lessons learned, right? So in my opinion, when I'm doing something wrong, I'm not saying, oh my God, I did it wrong and all that stuff. I'm more about concentrating, okay, so this was a challenge for me and I learned something. So do you have in your experience some lessons learned that are related to digital transformation that will be interesting for our audience? And I'm sure you have. So
lessons learned, lessons learned. I would say the main one, kind of going back to keeping it more high level, is being super judicious when deciding where you want to apply digital transformation. I think that obviously in the tech world and like even just the tech adjacent world, like things are changing so quickly that you just need to adopt digital transformation like in some aspect. Otherwise you will just fall behind. But I think that it's so important to just keep in mind, like not everything needs to be transformed, you know, like there's such a balance. And I think that it's so difficult to find companies that have really struck that balance. I think Goodway's doing a really good job of kind of balancing the two, but yeah, again, just, and it's the same thing with AI. Like we don't want to use digital transformation for the sake of it, just like how a lot of companies right now kind of throw AI into something just to check the box and say that they're using AI, but like, is it actually delivering value? Like probably not. So I think just like for both of those things, just taking some time, you know, like take a beat, really think about it, do a cost analysis, do some predictive measurement, like see what it would actually affect in the future before you kind of like pull the trigger on that.
Yes,
I'm curious your thoughts on that though. Like what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, my company, as we are specialized in digital transformation, for us, it's always the support. And generally, what I learned during these years is that it's all, again, about transparency. And when we are speaking about digital transformation, and specifically when, like, as I mentioned, our company, we basically provide with dedicated teams, we learned that it's good to have that transparent relationship with the companies with whom we are working. So it's really important like to have that relationship where they trust you and you are showing the experience level that you have. I think that's helping really a lot during digital transformation. And the other thing is always be up to date with technologies. That's actually my next question, but I'll also include it in lessons learned because I think specifically with our world, like the IT world and tech world, as you mentioned, it's all about being up to date. I mean, whenever you are learning something, I'm sure like 2 weeks later, there's something new. There's a new addition to it. There are updates. So thinking that, okay, I got this knowledge and that's enough, it will never be enough. And I think one of the lessons learned for me and for my company was having that continuous self-development of the people and employees and generally also sharing that knowledge with our partners. So I think it's about learning and self-development that should be continuous on our side. And yeah, that's basically helping at least to have smooth digital transformation with latest technologies and all that stuff. So
that's a really good point.
Do you agree with that? What do you think about that?
100%. Yeah. Staying up to date. That's another one. Cause it's like, you know, there's so many companies now and so many startups, like so many that are so like hyper focused on like the most niche automation problem that you're experiencing or like the most specific process that maybe you didn't even consider could be made better or could be outsourced. And so, yeah, kind of like staying up to date with that, I think is really important because there's probably a lot of opportunities for digital transformation that are being missed because of that. Yeah. But no, I definitely agree. I think that's interesting.
Awesome. And as I mentioned about technologies, I would like to ask you about the technology suggestions that you will give. Like, are there any technologies, tools that you consider are helping with digital transformation and can support the process?
I mean, a very obvious one that comes to mind is Slack, just because it's really helped with like kind of internal comms in our company. And especially in like over the past couple of years, like the recent updates that let you like send code blocks and things like that. It's been really helpful for fast iteration between the different engineering teams at our company. Another one that comes to mind that we've been really leaning into is called Streamlit. It's like a low code, like very fast prototyping app that's been able to, because we're a smaller team, like our dev team's pretty small, but we service like a very wide range of customers and it's pretty high volume. And so we don't always have time to build like a native app from the ground up with the time that we're given. And so Streamlit and like any low code platform really is a really good way that we've discovered to like create a prototype within like 2 days, get something that looks clean, get something that was polished in front of the client and kind of like start getting feedback as sort of like a beta kind of thing. And then once we have that feedback, then we can like take it back to the team and start building things from the ground up. So that's been like a really crucial for us in terms of like the fast turnaround, especially because, you know, the ad tech world isn't really like a tech industry world. You know what I mean? Like it's like tech adjacent.
Yeah.
And so it's like weird to exist on a tech team within advertising because like, compared to startups, which was like so much faster moving, like we're existing in this like totally different space. And so things like that have really helped us adjust and kind of like get up to speed, I think.
Yes, yeah, definitely agree. And I'm happy you mentioned about Slack. I think lots of companies now are using Slack, and the way that is integrated with a lot of tools that are
So
generally there,
many.
like
It's
task
nuts.
management tools. Yeah, I'm sure on the marketing side there are also many tools that can be integrated, and all those integration that it has, it became so flexible to use it in so many ways. Like recently, I think they did something like Canva, and you are just able to
You can like
document
see
everything
it in
there.
the,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly, and doing the calls. So, and I think a lot of these kind of technologies and tools are the tools of the future that will definitely stay there for a long time. And going back to self-development, I think the tools are same. Like for digital transformation, it's so important to use tools that are developing itself during the path and when you have that digital transformation, because it will be only about features that are like there for 10 years, even like 5 years. You will generally start replacing those tools with something more new. But when you see these kind of updates, like they're coming, I think every month almost, it's
Yeah.
it's so cool and important to see that like these tools are also developing and they are bringing more and more functionalities to themselves, which is again supporting digital transformation too. So that's definitely something important to tell about. And I think my last question to you will be about the advice. So what advice would you offer to other companies or like individuals to take into account when they want to start their digital transformation?
Yeah. I mean, if you're starting digital transformation and you haven't, kind of tapped into that world yet, I would say the biggest thing, and I know you already touched on this, but it's just like keeping an open mind. Change is hard. And often at the beginning, like altering your strategy, altering how you do things on a day to day basis, it's going to be a learning curve and it will seem a lot less efficient at first. We've seen it a lot. Like every time we migrate tools or like incorporate something, it's just always a problem at the beginning. But like, really trust the process, I would say.
Yes.
And just like do your research, keep up to date on new things that are coming out, like you were saying. But yeah, I would say just keep an open mind because the world is shifting, everything's changing so quickly, and if you want to be a player, you just have to shift with it. And that's just something that I've learned kind of being in the industry, but it definitely keeps it interesting.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I think it's all about being open to those changes and being ready to be involved in those changes,
Yes.
because you just can't stay and seeing those changes going on. So awesome.
100%.
Well, thank you so much. Anything else you would like to add before we will wrap up this episode?
I mean, no, just beyond this has been a lovely conversation. Thank you for having me. I've learned a lot and I had a good time.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much again, and yeah, have a great day.
Thank you.